You walk into a room and a dog you've never met before runs straight to you. Not to the person next to you, not to anyone else. To you. You didn't do anything special. You didn't call it over. You just walked in. And somehow, that animal decided you were safe. Most people chalk it up to luck. Or maybe the dog just likes everyone. But the real answer is far stranger than that. Animals are reading you. Constantly. And what they are reading goes much deeper than whether you have a treat in your pocket. For most of human history, the relationship between people and wild animals was simple. They ran from you or they tried to eat you. You were either a predator or a threat. There was no in-between, but somewhere along the way, something shifted. Certain animals began to make distinctions, not just between dangerous humans and safe ones, between humans who meant them harm and humans who wanted to help them. And scientists are only beginning to understand exactly how that process works. The first thing you need to understand is that animals live inside a constant stream of information. Every second of every day, your body is broadcasting signals you are completely unaware of. Your heart rate, your posture, the speed of your breath, the direction of your gaze, the microscopic chemical compounds releasing from your skin. You are not a mystery to the animals around you. You are an open book, written in a language your ancestors didn't even know they were speaking. Dr. Anna Wilkinson at the University of Lincoln has spent years studying how animals process human social cues. What her research reveals is striking. Even animals with no prior positive contact with humans show measurable differences in how they respond to calm humans versus anxious ones. It is not just about behavior. The animals are detecting something physiological, something that happens inside your body before you've even consciously decided how to act. Think about what that means. Before you've smiled, before you've reached out your hand, before you've said a single word, that animal already knows something about you. There is a concept in animal behavior science called referential signaling. It describes the way animals use specific cues to communicate information about the world to others around them. Dogs, for example, have evolved over 15,000 years of living alongside humans to become extraordinarily sensitive to human social signals. But what researchers discovered is that this sensitivity runs in both directions. Dogs don't just read where you're pointing, they read what you're feeling. They read why. A study led by Dr. Ludwig Huber at the Messerli Research Institute in Vienna found that dogs could distinguish between a generous person and a selfish person, based entirely on watching those people interact with a third party. The dogs weren't involved, they were simply observing, and what they saw changed how they behaved toward those humans afterward. The generous person received more trust, more approach, more time. The selfish person received distance and avoidance. The dogs had made a moral judgment, not in the way humans make moral judgments, with language and reasoning and layers of cultural context, but in a way that was ancient and fast and surprisingly accurate. You might think this only applies to domesticated animals, creatures that have spent thousands of years close to us, learning our signals. But the evidence points somewhere far more interesting. Wild animals with little to no history of direct human contact show this capacity too. Primatologist Franz de Waal spent decades studying chimpanzees and bonobos and found that these animals have a sophisticated sense of fairness, reciprocity, and intentionality. When a human accidentally knocked food away from a chimpanzee versus deliberately withheld it, the chimp responded differently to each scenario. It wasn't just about the outcome. The animal was reading the intent behind the action. Its emotional response changed based on what it concluded the human had meant to do. That is not a small discovery. Intent reading requires something scientists call theory of mind, the ability to model what another creature is thinking and wanting. For a long time, the scientific consensus held that only humans had this ability in any meaningful form. That consensus did not survive contact with the evidence. Here is where it gets stranger. Animals do not only detect your intentions in the moment. There is growing evidence that they remember your character over time. They build a history of you. Elephants are perhaps the most extraordinary example. Researchers at Amboseli National Park in Kenya documented elephant herds that respond with heightened vigilance and fear to clothing, and scents associated with the Maasai people, who have historically hunted and clashed with elephants, while showing relatively calm behavior toward the Kamba people, who have coexisted peacefully with them. The elephants were not making a blanket generalization about all humans. They were making a specific, remembered distinction. They had built a reputation system for different groups of humans, and they were passing that information down through generations. And that system extends to individuals. Wildlife rehabilitators who work with the same animals over long periods consistently report that animals they have released will sometimes recognize them from a distance months or years later, behave differently toward them than toward other humans nearby. There are documented cases of wild wolves returning to the researchers who once cared for them, and displaying social behaviors they showed to no one else. The animal remembered, and the memory carried emotional weight. Ravens and crows have demonstrated something even more unsettling. Research conducted by Dr. John Marsleff at the University of Washington showed that crows could recognize individual human faces. A crow that had been handled in a way it found threatening would alert nearby crows to that specific person. The warning spread through the local population, and the generations of crows born after the original encounter, birds who had never personally interacted with that human, learned to recognize and mob that face based on social transmission alone. The reputation had become cultural memory. It had been passed down like knowledge. So what exactly are animals reading? What is the actual signal they are detecting? Part of it is your autonomic nervous system. When you feel fear or aggression, your body activates your sympathetic response. Your heart rate rises, your pupils dilate, your muscles tighten. Specific stress hormones move through your blood and release as chemical signals through your skin. Animals have evolved over hundreds of millions of years to detect these signals precisely because those signals mean danger. A calm, regulated nervous system broadcasts something entirely different. Lower cortisol, slower, steadier movement, softer eye contact, relaxed muscle tone. To an animal scanning its environment, that combination of signals carries one clear message: you are not a threat. But goodness, in the way animals seem to detect it, is more than the absence of threat. It is something more active. Research on service dogs found that dogs could detect shifts in their owner's physiological state before the owner was consciously aware of those shifts, and would move toward the person and attempt to provide comfort. They were not reading the absence of danger. They were detecting distress and responding to it. That is not a conditioned behavior. That is something much older, something that functions, in every meaningful sense, like empathy. Even fish have shown traces of this. In studies of cleaner wrasse, a small reef fish that removes parasites from larger fish, researchers found that wrasse, who consistently prioritized the client fish's experience over their own immediate food reward, earned more repeat visits. The client fish were evaluating the quality of the interaction. They were choosing to return to the more trustworthy partner. There is a social economy inside those coral reef interactions, and the currency is something that looks very much like character. Now here's the part that should sit with you. If animals can detect who is calm, who is generous, who can be trusted, then there is no performance that fools them. You cannot fake your nervous system. You cannot lie with your cortisol. You cannot perform a kindness your body does not actually feel. What an animal senses is not the story you tell about yourself. It is what you actually are beneath the story. This is why people who spend significant time with animals often describe feeling more honest in their presence than in the company of other humans. The animal is responding to the signal, not the surface. And the signal comes from something older and harder to manipulate than language. Your ancestors understood this, even if they never had words for it. For the overwhelming majority of human existence, your ability to move through the natural world without triggering alarm in the animals around you was not a curiosity. It was a survival skill. The hunter who moved through a forest with a still and focused mind didn't just feel calmer. He broadcast a different frequency of information, and the world around him responded accordingly. You were always part of that conversation. You were never separate from it. You simply stepped away from it very recently, and something in you still knows how to return. Dr. Mark Bekoff, a biologist and cognitive ethologist at the University of Colorado, has argued for decades that animals have rich, complex emotional lives, and that scientific reluctance to acknowledge this is not caution, it is denial. His research suggests that the emotional attunement between humans and animals is not sentiment projected onto the natural world. It is a fundamental feature of social life on this planet, one that predates language, predates civilization, predates the emergence of the species that invented the word goodness. The animals that can sense a good person are not doing something magical. They are doing something ancient. They are using the same toolkit every social creature uses to navigate a world full of strangers, to decide in real time who deserves trust and who deserves distance. They are just faster at it than you are, because no one ever taught them to doubt what they feel. The next time you walk into a room and a dog you've never met crosses the floor to reach you, it is not luck. That animal ran a scan that took less than a second, and it found something worth approaching, something steady, something honest, something real. The question was never whether the animal knows if you're a good person. The question is whether you know what it found when it looked at you.